This transportation meeting in order at 5:30. Roll call, Amanda, Mike, and myself. Item number 3, agenda revision and approvals.
Move to approve the agenda?
Second.
Any discussion?
None?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Item number 4, approve the minutes from February 22nd, 2020 meeting.
Move to approve the February 22nd, 2020 meeting minutes?
Amanda,
Second that.
Mike, any discussion?
None?
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Number 5 would be new business discussion with appropriate action.
None.
None.
We have none. All right, and then we will go on to number 6 will be the unfinished business discussion with appropriate action, review and discussion of the 2021-2022 transportation routes and ridership options presented by Go Right Way. We have Colleen, we have Patty, and I believe it's Nate.
Yes.
And we have Nate from Right Way with us this evening. So, all right, we'll turn it over to you guys, and Brittany will also be involved with that.
Want me to start?
I can start.
Okay.
Okay. So when we last met on February 22nd, we presented what we thought was going to be the best option for cost savings for the district. And one of the pieces of feedback that was provided to us from that meeting was that the committee was not comfortable with the 3 different bell times for the elementary buildings. Okay. And so we went ahead and we prepared additional options, options 2, 3, and 4. I consider the option that was presented on February the 22nd as being the first option. So when we reworked that, we came up with a couple of additional options, and I'm going to just review those with you this evening. Option 1, of course, is the one that you have seen previously. Option 2 still allowed for the combining of the Germantown High School and Kennedy Middle School students in addition to the Kettle Moraine High School students, but it kept the elementary bell times the same, which would have resulted in the savings of, could result in the savings of about $100,000 for the district. Option 3 was also presented that night, and that did also involve combining the Germantown High School and Kennedy Middle School students, but it compressed. We came up with the option of having County Line MacArthur having the same bell times and Amy Bell and Rockfield having the same bell times. And you can see on your handout that you have there, that would have resulted in a savings of just under $268,000, okay? The difference between option 3 and option 4, which we are taking off the table tonight, option 4 and option 3 resulted in a very late arrival time home for the elementary students, and most particular the Rockfield and Amy Bell students of 5:20, 5:30 in the afternoon. So that's why we're not going to really discuss that option any further with the committee tonight.
Okay.
So when we met with when I provided this information to the district office previously for review prior to being sent out to you, we are not the experts in the required amount of instructional time. So the times that we originally had on the board information or the committee information packet that was sent out to you was just a guide for us internally to make sure that those would work. And we met with Brittany prior to tonight's meeting to come up with some recommended bell start times and bell end times.
Can I have you just pause for a quick second?
Sure.
What is our educational minutes for high school, middle school, and elementary?
What's required?
Correct.
So, good question. The state requires kindergarten to have 437 hours. And the reason that's so low is that because half day
Yep.
can count for that. Grades 1 through 6, 1,050 hours. Grades 7 through 12, 1,137 hours. And when I plug in when I look at next year's calendar,
Mhm.
right? So you look at, there's a Excel spreadsheet that's on DPI's website. Then you plug in how many contracted days, how many parent-teacher conferences, how many early releases, all those things. You kind of throw in like 2 snow days or whatever, just to get your idea.
Sure.
If I look at that, our middle school hours would be 1,229 hours, and our high school would be 1,184 hours. So high school, because the middle school has a longer day, that's why they have more instructional minutes than the high school. I'm not sure why. Elementary has the least amount, but they also have the least requirement for hours. And if you're looking at the requirement is from DPI 1137, and we're sitting at 1184,
What was the middle school again?
1229.
Thank you.
Oh,
That's
12.
that's how many they have
Right.
required, and because we're a 6-8, really they're under the 1137
Okay.
requirement too.
So in order to capture those minutes, what time do we need to start?
Well, I based those pieces on our
So-
current.
He based those
On
times
7 hours
on of
and-
what we have at 7 hours and, what did we decide? 7 hours and 15 minutes at the high school. We had 7 hours and 20 minutes at the middle school. We had 6 hours and 54 minutes at the elementary. That's what we currently have.
But I think before we even go on that and worrying about the minutes, I think what we need to focus on is picking up an option.
Okay.
Yep.
And then that option is going to have to be sent to the full board, okay, for recommendation. And then at that point, then those two are going to have to meet with all the principals and everybody, make sure this all works out. And they may be coming back to us and saying, guess what? The option you guys recommended isn't going to work.
Okay.
So that's the legwork behind that.
Yep.
What we need to look at is what is the best option for us and for the students at this point.
Okay. Thanks, Rick.
Good point.
And I guess I'll just add, with all 3 of these options, we took what the current day structure is.
Right.
So if amongst their work and work with us, we determine what the days can be, if they're going to be a little shorter or longer, we'll definitely work within the parameters of
Right.
the broad concept and
Right.
provide the most efficiencies to you guys.
Right. And, like when I'm looking at option 1, you look at all that, it's great on paper. But then for Brittany and for Brett, they're going to have to go back and look at, we got traveling teachers, we got special ed, we got all different things that are going to come into play on that. We got to make sure that all works as one cohesive unit, especially with the different start times and everything. So, but what I like to get to is we need to come up with an option. We're running out of time here.
Yep.
Come up with an option as a group here, take that as a positive recommendation to the full board, move forward, giving these guys the option to start exploring that and getting together with their team.
Okay.
So that's what I'd like to accomplish tonight.
So the option, the first one is what we currently do right now. The second option, which is the first option, which is the second space you have in there, would be middle school and high school riding together. County line having its own start time. Amy Bell and Rockfield starting and ending at the same time. And MacArthur having its own start and end time.
Brittany, can you just do me a favor when you're talking about that, because we are taping, so that our constituents at home can hear it, can you just tell what the times are going to be so that they have it? Because I know there's going to be questions when we put an option forward. There's going to be a lot of people coming forward asking us, well, what's the start time? What's changing? Why is it changing? So if we can, when we talk about when the middle school starts and when the high school starts and what the start times are going to be for the 4 elementaries, because they are going to be different. 2 are going to be the same. And there's 2 that are going to be different. So
I don't know, am I on?
Would you like me to run down those times? Or-
Well, they're suggested times.
yeah, they're
so-
suggested times.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if we would start the middle school at 7:10, then everything would fall forward. If we would change that start time, everything would have changed that exact time moving forward. So if the example was that the middle school would start at 7:10, they'd end at 2:15 or 2:25. If the high school would then start, because they need time to drop the middle school off and go to the high school, they would start at 7:20, which is pretty much what they start at right now. And they would end at 2:35, which is what time they end right now. County line, right now, they currently start at 2:50. The suggestion, and again, this is just a, this is just a,
8:50.
or 8:50. They would start at 8:21. They currently end at 3:44. This scenario would end at 3:15. Then Amy Bell and Rockfield would start at 8:46, which is pretty close to what they start at right now. And they would end at 3:45, which is pretty close to what they start at right, or they end at right now. MacArthur, they would start about 16 minutes later than what they currently start right now, so 9:06. And then they would get out at 4 p.m., which is about 16 minutes later than what they start now. All that can be adjusted. If the first time goes up, the rest of it can go up. If the first time goes down, the rest of it has to go down, if that makes sense.
Yep.
So the biggest change in this scenario would be middle school. But to get the middle school and the high school on the same route, they'd have to start around the same time.
Okay, and that's for option 1 that's
Yes.
being
Correct.
presented. Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions about that?
No, I like it. You know, the start times and end times are not that far off. Maybe a little bit for the middle school, but I like it. Looks good.
And option 1, with the times that you currently see, you know, on the paperwork that was handed out this evening, the students should be off the bus by 4:45, 4:50,
Which they are
which they are
currently.
Okay, so we're still within our 60 minutes or less,
Mhm.
Correct,
Okay.
yes, that is correct.
no matter what, if we change these times at this
Mhm.
option. Okay,
Yeah, some actually might see decreased ride times
Mhm.
with kind of how we paired things together.
okay.
Um,
I know that this option here conceptually presents some challenges with teachers and traveling teachers and shared teachers or shared
Right,
aides.
It may. We would have to work with.
yep, and
The
that's
sites
why.
on that.
yeah.
But this saves a significant amount in your transportation budget and still gets the students home at a reasonable time at the very end of the school day for the littlest children, the MacArthur children.
Right.
Excuse me.
Brett, when you look at this, I mean, I know I'm just gonna ask you this, but do you see any problem with this?
No, and I know that one of the pieces on here was middle school, high school kids riding together. I've been in, I don't know how many districts, but that was standard. And that's from big districts like Verona to Kimberly, middle school kids with high school kids. And we actually had elementary kids with high school kids. It happens, think of every rural school in the state that's happening and as well as the bigger district. So that's not, and I'd say our kids in general are pretty darn good to begin with, and we'll handle it if they're not. But so I don't see that issue. And I think the tweaking, elementary is pretty close. High school, middle school's the component that we want to look at, and if we have to adjust. Brittany asked me the question, well, what if we took 10 minutes off the middle school's schedule, but without impacting their instructional minutes? So that's the piece that you were referencing before, is that if we have this concept, we can then go back and start to put real numbers to it and go, okay, how do we trim 5 minutes in passing time throughout the day versus instructional minutes to still make it work? So I don't see from the 10,000 foot view, I don't see any issues with it really. I mean, we'll work through them, but
Right. I guess the only thing that I would look at is now that we would be combining that middle school and high school, there are going to be parents that are going to be concerned.
Yeah.
So one, we really have to make sure that cameras are working, number one. Bus drivers are really paying attention to the buses. And then I would even go to another step is, I think if we were to go with option 1 and start this in 2021, the new school year, even having a chaperone on those buses for maybe the first couple routes, just to make sure that we're making sure there's no issues.
Kids feel safer.
Yeah. And, you know, and honestly, most kids get on the bus and look at their
Yep.
phone with their earbuds in and,
Right.
but, I think sometimes people worry about what's the exposure of the conversations that are happening with high school kids
Correct.
versus middle school kids. And I think the right way can kind of attest that kids kind of go their different sides of the bus or different, you know, kind of high school kids will end up in the back and,
In the past, excuse me, Mrs. Sutherland, in the past, the middle schoolers and the high schoolers did ride together here. Okay, I think you were on the board
Mhm.
at that point in time. And yes, there were some issues, but nothing out of the ordinary. And it was certainly a rite of passage when you became a freshman that you got to go to the back half of the
Right,
bus.
right, right.
To be perfectly honest with all of you. But there was nothing very extraordinary with the behavior. Granted, now that's a couple decades ago.
Sure.
And there still will always be issues, but there's issues
Right.
separated at the different levels at this point
You
in
have
time too. So I don't really-
Kindergartners
Right.
riding the bus with fifth graders. I mean,
and
totally,
right.
you
And a good
know,
number of your
different-
juniors and seniors are driving at that stage too.
Right.
So it's really, you've got this middle age student, you know, up to 15,
And it's the
16.
middle schoolers that are the most active,
Right.
to put it kindly.
And I think another question we were anticipating that others might have is to combining the middle school and high school, you know, what is the volume of students going to be on the bus? You know, and it's,
Yep.
and I know that's something we discussed with Brittany too, and we're actually going to be able to keep that volume somewhat down based on current ridership levels. It's not going to be packed buses with, you know,
Three to a seat?
Three to a seat.
okay.
It's, you know, that's not what we're looking at with this option. We're still looking at, I think you ran some numbers.
Right, so
Brittany.
we took the ridership at our last meeting. I think I showed you the ridership versus who was eligible.
Yeah.
So if we combined those, the middle school and the high school and the AM, we'd had an average of 28 students on the bus.
Oh.
An average, so not everyone's gonna have 20, some might have more, some might have less, so an average of 28 students. So if for some reason a parent is concerned, their middle school student can go pretty close to the beginning of the bus and
Yeah.
separate themselves if a parent is,
Yeah.
you know, stating they don't want that. And then same in the afternoon, it's about 32 students on the bus. And these are 84 passengers, 72 passenger buses.
Okay.
So
So
two
that-
to a seat is like 46, you know, passengers.
Yeah, so you're
Okay.
still looking at.
So you're
one
still
or
looking
two
at
a
one,
seat, yeah.
one, maybe two.
Right.
And obviously
that's
you have
an average.
extracurriculars that happen, so a lot don't take the bus later and.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I received an email today, and I know there's some other concerns out there. That was one of the things about the minutes.
Mhm.
And then how many kids were going to be on the bus when we combine the high school and the middle school, if we were to do that. And then there was another question that was pertaining to, is this going to be set in stone for the future, or is this going to be an option that we're going to do for the next year? And then are we going to look at it again? And I know Brittany sent an email back to that one individual's questions, and it's something that we're going to look at each year individually. So
Yeah,
I just want to make sure that people
and-
understand that and know that that's what we're doing.
Mhm.
So.
Mhm.
And nothing has changed with the private school transportation.
Right, I saw that.
Related to this, we're still able to absorb the St. Mary students residing within their defined attendance area onto the Grace Lutheran and Bethlehem Lutheran routes to help compress that. So nothing's really changing with that.
And was there a reason why County Line was 821 and MacArthur was 906? Any reason why we picked that? Those? Is it
County
because the,
line is, because most of the county line attendance area is right in the village of Germantown. And to the east of like MacArthur School, there are some areas that are, I want to call it rural because
right,
Rockville and Amy Bell are rural.
Right.
But there are some areas for MacArthur that do go out
Correct.
outside of the village
Boundary.
boundaries,
Mhm.
so to speak. So it was much more efficient to go out and get those county line
Okay.
children and get them to school and then do the MacArthur.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I thought. I just want to make sure that we clarified that so people understood that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there was a handout they gave. So I think the confusion at our last meeting was that we, or maybe it was just me, assumed that MacArthur was like all by itself and this like lone soldier over here and everybody else was kind of kept together. Once we started reviewing these, that's not the fact. So we created, or right way, created what I think is a better visual than that other one where you saw the two columns and then MacArthur by themselves. So this kind of shows you that the timing to pick up the MacArthur students is smaller. I think I'm stating this correctly.
The
So,
window of time is.
The window
smaller.
of time is smaller. That's why they should be the later one. But you can
Gotcha.
see that the 3 tiers of
Right.
Mhm.
are built into there.
And
So this is how many buses are run for that group of students.
Mhm.
for regular transportation. This
Okay.
does not include any special needs.
Right.
For early childhood.
Okay.
And then obviously on the left is AM and on the right is PM.
Right. So we'd be running 30 in the AM and 32 buses in the evening.
And if there is any other efficiencies that can be found or exploring possible parent contracts, if that is a
Right.
path that the district decides to go down, it's very likely we could eliminate one more piece of equipment, and it could be 29 and 31 pieces of equipment.
Okay. Okay.
Which we've already eliminated quite a few from this year to next year.
Correct.
4 and 8.
Well, I have to tell you, I appreciate you guys putting your
Mhm.
pencils to the paper there and coming up with this other option. I really do like this option and the way it plays out, especially with the fact that we're not putting those little kiddos out too far in time. And the start times, I'm not worried about those. I know that was a concern I had, but I think we can adjust to that. And I think we can also, with Brittany and Brett and our team getting together, I think we can make this really work. I really would like to see option 1 move forward. And, I would need some other input from other members.
Well, I like option 1. It's great.
Yeah.
The middle schoolers are going to have to get up a little earlier in the morning. We apologize for that, but it keeps helps us with our costs.
Mhm.
So, but look at it on the bright side. They'll also get home earlier
Yeah.
too.
Mhm.
So after the first week, they'll be happy, especially on a afternoon when it's warm outside,
yeah.
right?
It also does help with athletics or activities that they.
Correct.
wouldn't
I
have
just was
after
writing that down.
Mhm.
For the
Okay.
the younger students.
For middle school.
For middle school. Mhm.
And we did talk about, the studies that are out there with having the younger elementary age students going earlier because they're up anyways, because their
Mhm.
parents are up. But as Brittany, pointed out, it causes, at the athletic level of competition for the high schoolers to not be as,
Right, they wouldn't get their educational minutes because they'd have to leave early to get to certain events. So
Mhm.
that's just
Correct.
not something, that we can do.
Yeah, I don't agree with
correct,
that.
unless they would continue virtually for part of their classes, but my
No.
goodness, people just want to see that virtual
Yeah.
education.
You can go for it?
Sure.
So the motion that was on there originally, I mean, you're more than welcome to read whatever you want. I just want to make sure that it's added in there about making sure that we look at the times prior to it going to the board. So I just don't want that this is set in stone completely by this committee. So it would be option 1, and that it's based also on us figuring out the times, and there's something else.
Yeah,
I
so
was
there-
there.
So it's a recommendation on, I printed it out because I didn't want to necessarily start my computer. Recommendation on page 3, I think, in the
Mhm.
agenda.
Mhm.
Yep, okay. All right, so I'd like to bring forward to the Board of Education with a positive recommendation to move forward with option 1 presented to Go Right Way Transportation Group with the understanding that the district administration will set the start and end times of each site, taking into consideration the travel time needed between schools.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second?
Mike. Amanda. Any further discussion on this?
No?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we'll move forward with that. All right, thank you guys for that. And lastly,
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Now that's a committee meeting.
That's right.